Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Valiant and watched the stars through the main viewport. His ship was the pride of Earth's fleet, a massive vessel that carried the hopes of humanity among the alien civilizations of the galaxy. For 15 years, humans had been members of the Galactic Council, and for 15 years, Jake had served as Earth's representative in Council space. The Council chambers orbited Zentara Prime, a neutral world where 47 different alien species gathered to discuss trade, politics, and the future of the galaxy. When humanity first joined, they had been full of hope. Earth's leaders believed they would learn from older civilizations and build strong friendships across the stars. Jake had believed it too. He had been wrong. The door to the bridge opened and Commander Ben Harper walked in. Ben was Earth's chief representative to the Council, a diplomat who had spent more time dealing with aliens than Jake ever wanted to. The man looked tired. More than tired. He looked defeated. "The vote is final," Ben said. He dropped into his chair and stared at the floor. "They're taking New Terra." Jake felt his jaw tighten. New Terra was humanity's newest colony, a beautiful world where 50,000 humans had built homes and started families. The colony had cost Earth billions to establish. Now the Council was handing it over to the Vexalian Empire as payment for membership dues that humanity could barely afford. "The Vexalians will strip mine that world within 5 years," Jake said. "Everyone knows what they do to colonies." "The Council doesn't care," Ben replied. "They say it's our fault for not paying on time." "They say we agreed to their terms when we joined." Jake turned away from the viewport. He had been in Council space long enough to understand how things really worked. The Galactic Council was not a partnership of equals. It was a system designed by the oldest and strongest civilizations to control everyone else. Younger species like humanity paid heavy taxes and followed strict rules, while the older species grew rich from their labor. The Council controlled access to advanced technology. They decided which species could expand to new systems and which had to stay confined. They made laws that always seemed to benefit the powerful while crushing anyone who tried to rise up. Earth had discovered this truth slowly, painfully, over 15 long years. Ben stood up and walked to the viewport beside Jake. "Dr. Lisa Patterson finished her quantum computer last month," he said quietly. "It was a breakthrough, the kind of technology that could have changed everything for Earth." "Let me guess," Jake said. "The Council wanted it." "They demanded she hand over all her research, said it needed to go into their archives for preservation. You know what that means? They'll lock it away for 1,000 years and no one will ever see it again. That's what they do with anything that might let younger species become independent." Jake had heard stories about the Council archives. They were massive facilities that held technology and knowledge from hundreds of civilizations. But none of it was shared. The Council claimed they were preserving it for future generations. In reality, they were hoarding it to maintain their power. "There's more," Ben continued. "Remember the pirate attacks in the outer colonies?" Jake nodded. For 6 months, human shipping lanes had been hit by raiders. Dozens of cargo vessels had been destroyed. Hundreds of people were dead. Earth had begged the Council for help. Human ships paid for Council protection as part of their membership dues. "The Council sent their response today," Ben said. "They say the attacks are our problem. They say each species needs to handle their own security issues, but we're still required to pay the protection fees." "Of course we are," Jake said bitterly. The worst part was that humanity had no choice. Earth had signed treaties when they joined the Council. Breaking those treaties would mean isolation. No trade with Council species, no access to Council space. Earth would be alone in a galaxy that seemed designed to crush anyone who stood by themselves. Ben pulled out a datapad and handed it to Jake. "This is the communication log from today's Council session. I want you to read it." Jake took the pad and scrolled through the transcript. The Council representatives had discussed the human problem. That was what they called it. The human problem. Earth asked too many questions. Humans complained about unfair treatment. Humans wanted access to technology they had not earned. Humans needed to learn their place. One representative from the Karathi Dominion had suggested that humanity should be grateful the Council allowed them membership at all. Another from the Threll Collective said Earth should consider themselves lucky they were not simply conquered and absorbed. The Council had laughed at that. Jake felt something cold settle in his chest. He had spent 15 years trying to make this work. He had believed that humanity could find their place in the galactic community through patience and hard work. But the galaxy did not reward patience. It rewarded power. "What are you going to do?" Jake asked. Ben took the data pad back and looked at it for a long moment. "I'm going to end this," he said. "Tomorrow, I'm standing before the Council and delivering Earth's withdrawal. We're leaving the Galactic Council." Jake stared at him. "Ben, they'll never let us leave peacefully. No species has ever left the Council before." "I know," Ben said, "but we can't stay. We're being bled dry. They take our resources, they steal our technology, they restrict our expansion, and they laugh at us when we ask for help. This isn't membership. It's slavery dressed up in diplomatic language." "Earth's government approved this?" Jake asked. "President Shaw made the decision this morning. The vote was unanimous. Every nation on Earth agreed. We're done with the Council." Jake looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, humanity's home. And scattered across 3 star systems were the colonies where millions of humans tried to build new lives. All of them were about to become targets. "When do we leave?" Jake asked. "As soon as I deliver the declaration tomorrow. Get the Valiant ready for immediate departure. I expect the Council will not take this well." Ben left the bridge, and Jake turned to his crew. "You heard the man. Prep the ship for emergency jump. I want us ready to leave at maximum speed." The next day, Commander Ben Harper walked into the Council chambers. Representatives from 47 species filled the massive hall. Ben stood at the speaker's platform in the center and activated his communicator. His words were broadcast across every frequency. "On behalf of the people of Earth and all human colonies, I hereby announce our immediate withdrawal from the Galactic Council. Humanity joined this body 15 years ago, seeking friendship and cooperation among the stars. Instead, we found exploitation and control. The Council has taken our resources, restricted our growth, and denied us the basic rights you claim to stand for. We will no longer participate in this system. Effective immediately, Earth is an independent power. We will chart our own course among the stars." The chamber erupted in noise. Some species shouted in anger. Others laughed. The head of the Council, a massive alien from the eldest civilization, simply stared at Ben with something that might have been contempt. "No species leaves the Council," the head said. "You will regret this decision." "We already regret staying as long as we did," Ben replied. Then he turned and walked out of the chamber. Jake had the Valiant moving before Ben even reached the docking bay. The ship broke away from Council headquarters and jumped to faster-than-light speed. As they entered the tunnel between stars, Jake checked his sensors one last time. He saw what he feared. Council warships were moving toward human space. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. The Council was not going to let humanity leave quietly. They were going to make an example of Earth. Jake set course for home and prayed they would arrive before the storm hit. 6 months had passed since Earth withdrew from the Galactic Council. Ambassador Kate Sullivan sat in her office on the orbital station above Earth and reviewed the latest trade reports. Every number told the same story. Humanity was being strangled. The Council had moved quickly after Ben Harper's declaration. Within days, they imposed a complete embargo on all human trade. Every Council species received orders to cut contact with Earth. Human ships were denied docking rights at stations across the galaxy. The few independent species that might have traded with humanity feared Council retaliation. Kate had spent half a year trying to find anyone willing to do business with Earth. She managed to secure deals with 3 small civilizations, but they charged double the normal prices and demanded payment in rare minerals. It was better than nothing, but barely. Earth's economy was struggling. The colonies needed supplies. The military needed fuel and parts. Research stations needed equipment. All of it had come from Council trade networks before. Now those networks were closed. Kate's communicator buzzed. It was Admiral Claire Rodriguez calling from Earth Defense Command. "We have another situation," Claire said. Her voice was tight with stress. "What now?" Kate asked. "Mining station Delta 7 stopped responding 3 hours ago. We sent a ship to investigate. The station is gone, not damaged, not destroyed, just gone, like something erased it from space." Kate felt cold. Delta 7 was the 4th facility to vanish in the past month. First it had been a small survey ship, then a cargo transport, then a research outpost, now a mining station with 200 workers aboard. "Any sign of what happened?" Kate asked. "None." The investigation team found debris in a scattered pattern, like the station had been torn apart on a molecular level. No weapons signatures, no engine trails, nothing that makes sense. Kate pulled up a star chart on her screen. She marked the locations where facilities had disappeared. They formed a pattern, a rough line pushing inward from the edge of human space. Something was moving toward Earth's colonies from the frontier. "Could it be the Council?" Kate asked. "We don't think so," Claire replied. "Their warships use weapons we recognize. This is something else. Something we've never seen before." On the frontier colony of Horizon Station, engineer Danny Chen was having his own problems. The communications array had been acting strange for days. Signals came in garbled. Transmissions to other colonies were filled with static. Danny had checked every system twice and found nothing wrong with the equipment. Then he discovered the source. Something was broadcasting interference directly at the station. The signal was powerful and precise, like someone was deliberately jamming their communications. But when Danny traced the signal's origin, it came from empty space. There was nothing there. No ships, no stations, nothing. He recorded the signal and ran it through analysis software. What he found made him call his supervisor immediately. The interference was not random static. It was structured data, mathematical patterns that repeated in precise intervals. Something artificial was broadcasting at them. "It's almost like a countdown," Danny told his supervisor. "The pattern changes every hour, becoming more complex. I don't know what it means, but it's definitely not natural." His supervisor sent the data to Earth. Scientists there spent days analyzing it. No one could figure out what the countdown meant or when it would reach 0. Admiral Claire Rodriguez commanded Earth's home fleet from her flagship orbiting Mars. She had 36 warships under her control, the strongest force humanity could gather. It was not enough. She knew it was not enough. But it was all they had. The attack came without warning. Claire was reviewing supply reports when her sensors officer shouted an alert. A ship had just appeared inside the solar system, not at the edge where ships normally arrived. Inside, past Jupiter, past the asteroid belt, right in the middle of human defenses. "How did it get there?" Claire demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. It just appeared. No jump signature, no energy buildup. 1 second there was nothing, then it was there." The enemy ship was like nothing in human records. It was angular and dark, covered in strange geometric patterns that seemed to hurt the eyes. Before Claire could give orders, the ship opened fire. 2 orbital defense platforms exploded. The enemy weapons bypassed their shields completely. Energy beams struck directly at the power cores, causing catastrophic failures. Hundreds of crew members died in seconds. "All ships, engage that target," Claire ordered. "Weapons free." 20 human warships converged on the enemy vessel. They fired missiles, energy weapons, and kinetic rounds. Most of the weapons simply vanished before impact, absorbed by some kind of defensive field humans had never encountered. The few shots that connected barely scratched the dark hull. The enemy ship moved with impossible speed. It dodged between human vessels, firing precise shots that disabled ships without destroying them. It was like watching a predator play with prey. The enemy could have killed them all quickly. Instead, it was studying them, learning how humans fought. Claire made a decision. All ships concentrate fire on Grid 7. Overload your weapons if you have to. I want everything we have hitting that one spot. The human fleet obeyed. 30 ships fired at once, focusing on a single point on the enemy hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the enemy's defensive field flickered. Energy weapons punched through and struck the ship's hull directly. The enemy vessel stopped moving. For 3 seconds it hung in space, damaged but still functional. Then it exploded. The detonation was massive, far larger than the ship's size should have allowed. It destroyed itself completely, leaving no debris behind. "Did we win?" someone asked on the bridge. Claire did not answer. She watched the space where the enemy ship had been and felt no victory. Something about the attack felt wrong. The enemy had been testing them, learning from them. And when it learned enough, it destroyed itself to prevent humans from studying its technology. The Council sent a message that evening. It was short and cold. They took responsibility for nothing but made their position clear. Humanity had left Council protection and entered regions of space covered by ancient treaties. Treaties Earth was no longer part of. Humanity had awakened something dangerous, something the Council had kept contained for thousands of years. The Council called it the Silence. They said it was an old enemy, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. The Council's predecessors had fought it long ago and found a way to lock it away in the dark spaces between stars. The Council had maintained that prison for millennia, keeping younger species safe without telling them what lurked in the shadows. Humanity's expansion into frontier space had damaged the prison. Now the Silence was awake and hunting the species that broke its cage. The Council offered one option: return to Council authority, submit completely to their control, accept whatever terms they demanded. In exchange, the Council would extend their protection and repair the prison that kept the Silence contained. Refuse, and humanity would face the consequences alone. President Linda Shaw called an emergency meeting. Leaders from every nation on Earth gathered, along with colonial governors and military commanders. The debate lasted for hours. Some argued they had no choice but to accept the Council's terms. Others insisted that returning to the Council would be the same as slavery. Ben Harper spoke last. The Council knew about this threat all along. They kept it secret to maintain control. Every species that joined them lived in fear of something they didn't even know existed. The Council used that fear to keep everyone dependent. But can we fight it? Someone asked. Can we survive the Silence alone? I don't know, Ben admitted. But I know we can't live as slaves. If we crawl back to the Council now, we'll never be free. They'll use this crisis to crush us completely. Whatever the Silence is, we'll face it on our feet. The vote was close. In the end, Earth decided to stand firm. They would not return to the Council. They would find another way. Dr. Amy Parker led a team studying the debris from the enemy ship that had attacked Mars. There was not much left. The self-destruct had been thorough. But Amy found something in the molecular patterns of the metal fragments. The enemy ship had not been built recently. The materials were ancient, older than human civilization by millions of years. More disturbing, there were no signs of life support systems, no crew quarters, no biological controls. The ship had been completely automated. "It's a machine," Amy reported to the military command. "Not a ship with a crew, a thinking machine that operates on its own, and based on the age of the materials, it's been out there for a very long time." Commander Steve Hayes volunteered to lead a reconnaissance mission into the frontier. He took 3 fast ships and headed for the border where human space met the unknown regions beyond. His orders were simple: find out what was coming and report back. What he found terrified him. Abandoned council monitoring stations dotted the frontier. They were old facilities, some dating back thousands of years. All of them had been positioned to watch something in the space beyond. Steve landed on one station and explored the empty corridors. He found logs, ancient records left by council species who had maintained the watch. They spoke of the silence with fear. They described it as an intelligence that consumed civilizations, a force that could not be reasoned with or stopped, only contained. The council had built a barrier using technology Steve did not understand. They called it a quantum net, a field that prevented the silence from crossing into council space. But maintaining it required constant monitoring and adjustment. The council had hidden the truth from younger species to keep them dependent and afraid. Steve found maps showing where the barrier had been damaged. 3 points along the frontier where human colonies had unknowingly built facilities that interfered with the quantum net. The silence had found those gaps immediately. He sent everything back to Earth and prepared to return home. As his ship jumped away from the frontier, Steve looked at the dark space beyond human territory. Somewhere in that darkness, the silence waited. And it was coming for humanity. Earth had 6 months at most before the real attack began. 6 months to find a way to fight an enemy that had nearly destroyed the galaxy millions of years ago. The council watched and waited. They expected humanity to break, to beg for protection, to accept any terms just to survive. But they did not understand humans. Humanity had left the council to be free. Now they would prove they deserved that freedom, no matter the cost. President Linda Shaw looked at the faces around the conference table. Military commanders, scientists, diplomats, and colonial representatives. Every person in the room understood they were deciding humanity's fate. Outside the windows of the orbital station, Earth hung in space, blue and beautiful, and completely unaware of how close it was to destruction. "We have 3 options," Linda said. "We can return to the council and accept whatever terms they demand. We can try to repair the barrier ourselves and trap the silence again, or we can find a way to destroy it." Admiral Claire Rodriguez spoke first. "The council wants complete submission, not just rejoining. They want Earth to accept permanent junior status, no expansion beyond our current 3 systems, all our advanced technology handed over to their archives, council governors placed in charge of our colonies. It would be the end of human independence." "What about repairing the barrier?" Kate Sullivan asked. Dr. Amy Parker shook her head. "We analyzed the data Commander Hayes recovered from the council monitoring stations. The barrier technology is beyond anything we understand. It would take us decades just to figure out how it works, and we'd need materials we don't have access to. The council controls those materials and would never trade them to us." "That leaves the 3rd option," Ben Harper said quietly. "We find a way to destroy the silence." The room went silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The council had fought the silence millions of years ago and barely survived. They had chosen containment because destroying it was impossible. Now humanity, a species that had barely reached the stars, was considering what the mighty council had rejected. "It's suicide," someone said. "Maybe," Ben replied. "But slavery is certain death. If we go back to the council now, humanity will never rise again. They'll make sure of it. At least if we fight, we have a chance." Captain Jake Morrison had been quiet until now. "I'll do it," he said. "I'll lead a mission to the council archives. If anyone has information about destroying the silence, it would be there." Linda looked at him. "Jake, they'll execute you if they catch you. The council doesn't forgive espionage." "I know," Jake said, "but we need that information. The Council kept records of their war with the Silence. Those records might contain something we can use. A weakness, a strategy, anything. You'll need a team, Claire said. Jake nodded. I need a good pilot. Someone who can handle security systems, and a scientist who can analyze whatever we find. Small team, fast in and out. Lieutenant Chris Baldwin volunteered as pilot. Maya Hughes, a security specialist who had worked with Council systems before Earth withdrew, joined next. Dr. Peter Ross, a quantum physicist who had studied Council technology for years, completed the team. They spent 2 weeks planning the mission. Maya studied every detail of Council security protocols. Peter prepared equipment to download data quickly. Chris mapped escape routes and calculated jump coordinates. Jake coordinated everything, knowing this might be the last mission any of them ever flew. The team used a captured Council transport, a small vessel taken from a smuggler who had tried to run the embargo. Maya and Peter modified its identification codes and created false credentials that showed them as a Korathi science team. The Korathi were Council members who regularly accessed the archives for research. The journey to Zentara Prime took 3 days. Jake kept the ship on normal trade routes, acting like any other Council vessel going about normal business. They passed several Council patrol ships without incident. The false credentials held up. Zentara Prime looked the same as Jake remembered. The massive station orbited the planet, housing the Council chambers and archives. Thousands of ships moved around it constantly. Jake guided the transport to a docking bay reserved for research vessels and waited while automated systems scanned their ship. The seconds felt like hours. If the security systems detected anything wrong with their credentials, Council guards would be waiting when they opened the airlock. But the light turned green and the docking clamps engaged. They were in. Maya led the way through the station. She moved with confidence, acting like she belonged there. The team wore clothing appropriate for Korathi scientists and carried data pads that showed research permits. To any casual observer, they were exactly what their credentials claimed. The archives were enormous. Levels and levels of data storage containing millions of years of galactic history. Most of it was open to Council members for research. But the sections dealing with the Silence were classified at the highest level. Only Council leadership could access those files. Maya found a secondary access point that bypassed the main security. It was a maintenance terminal used by technicians to service the archive systems. She spent an hour carefully hacking through layers of encryption while the others stood watch. "I'm in," she finally whispered. "But we don't have long. The system will detect the intrusion in maybe 20 minutes. Peter moved to the terminal and began downloading everything. Files appeared on his screen too fast to read. Information about the Silence, records from the ancient war, technical specifications for the barrier system, strategic analyses and tactical reports. All of it poured into their storage devices. Jake watched the corridor while Peter worked. Twice, Council security guards passed by. Both times, Jake and Chris pretended to study their data pads and discuss research topics. The guards ignored them. 15 minutes later, Peter gasped. "I found something." "What?" Jake asked, not taking his eyes off the corridor. "Instructions for destroying the Silence. The Council's predecessors considered it but decided it was too dangerous." Peter's hands moved quickly across the screen. "There's a central nexus, a massive structure in dark space that coordinates all the Silence's ships. If that nexus is destroyed, the entire network falls apart." "Why didn't the Council do it?" Maya asked. "Because the nexus is deep in Silence territory. They estimated it would take a fleet to fight through to reach it. The casualties would be massive, so they chose containment instead." "How massive?" Chris asked. Peter read the report. "The Council estimated 70% losses minimum. That was with their full military at the height of their power. For humanity, with our current forces, the survival rate would be close to 0. Jake felt his stomach tighten. "But it's possible?" "Technically, yes. If a fleet could reach the Nexus and plant weapons inside its core, the resulting explosion would cascade through the quantum network that connects all silence ships. Without coordination, they'd revert to simple defensive programming, still dangerous but not an extinction-level threat. "Download everything," Jake ordered. "Coordinates, technical data, tactical analyses, all of it." Peter worked frantically. The download was almost complete when alarms began blaring. Red lights flashed along the corridor. Maya's intrusion had been detected. "Time to go," Jake said. The team ran. Council security guards appeared at both ends of the corridor. Maya pulled out a weapon she had smuggled through screening and fired. The energy blast dropped the first guard. Chris took out another, but more were coming. They fought through 3 corridors, moving toward the docking bay where their ship waited. Peter clutched the storage device containing the downloaded data like his life depended on it. In a way, it did. That device held humanity's only hope. Jake reached the docking bay first and saw the problem immediately. 6 guards stood between them and their ship. The guards had plasma rifles aimed at the airlock. There was no way through. "Maya, can you override the bay doors?" Jake asked. "Not from here. I'd need to reach a command terminal." "Then we make a path." Jake looked at Chris. "On 3, we rush them. Put everything you have into covering fire. Maya, you run for the ship. Get the engines started." "Jake, that's suicide," Chris said. "We don't have a choice." Jake counted down. On 3, he and Chris opened fire. Energy blasts filled the docking bay. 2 guards went down immediately. The others scattered for cover, returning fire. Maya ran through the chaos, dodging plasma bolts that melted the deck plates around her. She reached the ship and disappeared inside. Seconds later, the engines roared to life. The ship began pulling against the docking clamps. Jake and Chris ran for it. A plasma bolt caught Chris in the shoulder. He stumbled but kept moving. Jake grabbed him and dragged him toward the airlock. Guards were closing in from all sides now. There were too many of them. Peter appeared in the airlock with a weapon. He fired over Jake's head, dropping 2 more guards. "Get in here!" Jake and Chris dove through the airlock. Maya disengaged the docking clamps before the door was even closed. The ship shot out of the bay and into open space. Council security ships immediately began pursuit. "Jump now," Jake ordered. "Jump drives need 30 seconds to charge," Maya replied. "We've got about 20 seconds before those security ships are in firing range." The math was simple. They would not make it. Jake moved to the weapons console and targeted the nearest security ship. He fired, not to destroy it, but to slow it down. The security ship dodged, losing precious seconds. 10 seconds, Maya said. More security ships were coming. Jake counted 8, then 12. The council was not going to let them escape. 5 seconds! A plasma bolt struck their shields. The ship shook. Alarms warned of system damage. 3 seconds! Jake held his breath. They were so close. Come on, come on. Jumping! The universe twisted. Stars became streaks of light. The council ships vanished as Maya pushed their vessel into faster-than-light travel. They had done it. Against all odds, they had stolen the council's most classified secrets and escaped. Chris groaned in his seat. His shoulder was badly burned. Peter immediately began treating the wound with medical supplies from the emergency kit. "You'll live," Peter said, "but you're going to hate the next few hours." Jake moved to the navigation station and checked their course. Maya had jumped them blindly, just trying to get away from Zentara Prime. They were heading toward the Galactic Edge, far from any council patrol routes. "Change course for Earth," Jake ordered. "Best speed. The council will be hunting us now. Every ship they have will be looking for this transport." The journey home took 5 days. They avoided all major routes and jumped through systems where the council had little presence. Twice they detected council warships on patrol and had to hide in asteroid fields until the danger passed. When they finally reached Earth space, Admiral Claire Rodriguez herself came out to escort them in. The relief Jake felt seeing human ships around him was overwhelming. They landed at Earth Defense Command and went immediately to a secure briefing room. President Shaw was there, along with every military and civilian leader. Jake handed Peter the storage device. "We have what we need," Jake said. "The location of the Silence's central nexus and a plan to destroy it. The Council chose not to because the casualties would be too high. But it can be done." Linda took the device and looked at it. "How high are the casualties?" "The Council estimated 70% losses using their full fleet," Peter said quietly. "For us, it could be worse." The room was silent. Everyone understood what that meant. If humanity tried this, most of the people who went would not come back. "Do we have any other choice?" Ben Harper asked. No one answered. They all knew the truth. Return to the Council as slaves or fight the Silence and probably die. Those were humanity's options. President Linda Shaw looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. Then she made her decision. "Prepare the fleet. We're going to destroy the Silence." Admiral Claire Rodriguez stood in the command center and watched the fleet assemble. Every military ship humanity possessed was gathering in orbit around Mars. Destroyers, frigates, carriers, patrol boats. Even old vessels that had been scheduled for decommission were being pulled back into service. But the military ships alone would not be enough, not for what they were about to attempt. The call had gone out across all human colonies. Volunteers wanted. Any ship that could mount weapons and survive faster than light travel. The response had been overwhelming. Cargo haulers arrived with missile pods welded to their hulls. Mining vessels showed up with industrial lasers modified for combat. Even pleasure yachts came, their owners determined to fight for humanity's freedom. Danny Chen commanded one of those modified ships. The Defiant Hope had been a bulk freighter before the war. Now it carried enough explosives to crack a small moon. Danny and his crew of 12 volunteers knew they probably would not survive the mission. They came anyway. Dr. Lisa Patterson led the engineering effort to upgrade the fleet. Her quantum computer breakthrough had started this whole mess with the Council. Now she used that same technology to give human ships a fighting chance. New weapons that could penetrate the Silence's strange defenses. Shield modifications based on the stolen Council data. Every small advantage they could create. "How many ships do we have?" Claire asked her second-in-command. 217, Admiral. 53 are proper military vessels. The rest are volunteers. Civilian ships with civilian crews who want to fight. Claire felt the weight of that responsibility. She was leading over 30,000 people into almost certain death. Most of them were not soldiers. They were farmers, miners, engineers, teachers, people who had never fired a shot in anger before. Now they were going to war against an enemy that had nearly destroyed the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison walked onto the bridge of the Valiant. The ship had been his home for 20 years. He knew every corridor, every system, every bolt. If this was going to be his last mission, at least he would fly in familiar surroundings. His squadron included 12 ships, all veterans who had served with him before. They would lead the assault, clearing a path for the main fleet. It was the most dangerous position in the formation. Jake expected half his squadron to die in the first hour of combat. Commander Ben Harper found Jake in the officers' mess the night before departure. The diplomat looked different in military uniform. Ben had insisted on coming despite having no combat training. He said he needed to see humanity's Declaration of Independence through to the end. "Are you scared?" Ben asked. Jake considered lying, then decided against it. "Terrified. I've been in combat before, but never anything like this. We're flying into the heart of enemy territory to attack something the Council couldn't defeat. The smart money says we all die. Then why go? Because if we don't, humanity dies slowly under Council control. At least this way we choose our fate. We go down fighting on our own terms." Ben smiled. "That's what I told the Council 15 years ago. I guess we're about to find out if I was right." Dr. Peter Ross briefed the fleet commanders on what they would face. The stolen data included tactical analyses from the ancient war. The Silence used coordinated swarm tactics, overwhelming enemies with superior numbers. Their weapons ignored conventional shields and armor, striking directly at power systems. They learned from every battle, adapting their strategies to counter whatever the enemy tried. "The only advantage we have is unpredictability," Peter explained. "The Silence is used to fighting council ships with standardized tactics. We need to be chaotic, creative, and willing to try things that make no logical sense. Confusion is our weapon." Dr. Amy Parker had made another discovery. The Silence responded strangely to certain radio frequencies: human music, old broadcasts, random noise. It disrupted their coordination somehow, creating brief gaps in their perfect teamwork. The fleet would broadcast everything they had during the attack: rock music, classical, news programs, sports commentary, anything to throw static into the Silence's network. The night before the mission, President Linda Shaw addressed the fleet. Her message was broadcast to every ship, every crew member preparing to risk everything. "Tomorrow you will jump into dark space and face an enemy older than human civilization. The Council calls it the Silence. They say it cannot be defeated, only contained. But the Council has grown comfortable with containment. They have forgotten how to take risks. They have forgotten what it means to fight for freedom rather than just maintain control. You have not forgotten. Each of you volunteered knowing you might not return. You go anyway because you understand what is at stake. If we fail tomorrow, the Council will use our defeat to justify their control over younger species for generations. But if we succeed, we prove that courage and determination matter more than age and power. We prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars, not because someone gave us permission, but because we earned it. Good luck, and thank you for your service." The fleet jumped at dawn. 217 ships entering faster-than-light travel simultaneously, headed for coordinates deep in dark space. The journey took 6 hours. 6 hours for crews to check weapons, review tactics, and make peace with whatever came next. Jake spent the time writing letters to people back home. He knew the letters would probably never be delivered, but writing them felt important anyway. When they dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the first thing Jake saw was darkness. The stars were gone, blocked by some kind of field the Silence generated. His sensors could barely penetrate the gloom. It was like flying blind. Then the enemy appeared. Hundreds of ships, thousands, more than the scanners could count. Dark, angular vessels surrounded the human fleet in every direction. The Silence had been waiting for them. "All ships, weapons free," Claire ordered. "Give them everything we have." The battle began. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. Missiles streaked through space. The human fleet fought with desperate intensity, while the Silence responded with mechanical precision. Jake led his squadron in a wild assault, dodging between enemy ships and firing at any target that appeared. His pilot flew like she was possessed, twisting through impossible angles to avoid enemy fire. Twice, they nearly collided with friendly ships. 3 times, enemy weapons missed them by meters. The Defiant Hope, Danny Chen's freighter, rammed into an enemy destroyer when its weapons failed. The impact destroyed both ships. Danny and his crew died instantly. But they took the destroyer with them and opened a gap in the enemy formation. The human fleet pushed through that gap. More volunteers sacrificed themselves to clear the path. A mining ship used its industrial laser to cut through enemy armor while absorbing fire meant for other vessels. A patrol boat deliberately drew enemy attention, leading a dozen silent ships away from the main fleet before being destroyed. Everywhere Jake looked, humans were dying, but they were also winning. Slowly, impossibly, the fleet was advancing deeper into Silence territory. The enemy adapted to their tactics, but humans kept changing strategies. They tried things that made no tactical sense. They broadcast music and noise that disrupted silence coordination. They fought with a chaos the ancient machines could not predict. Hours passed. The fleet pushed forward. Claire watched her tactical display and saw the numbers drop. 200 ships became 150, then 100, then 70. Every loss hurt, but they were still moving toward the objective. Commander Steve Hayes led a flanking attack that bought the fleet precious minutes. His 3 ships drew enemy fire while the main force advanced. 2 of his ships were destroyed. Steve's own vessel, badly damaged, managed to retreat back to the fleet. Dr. Amy Parker discovered something during the battle. The silent ships were all connected through quantum entanglement. Destroy one ship and the others instantly knew everything that ship had learned. But that connection worked both ways. Amy figured out how to inject false data into the network. She broadcast fake fleet movements that confused the enemy for critical seconds. After 12 hours of continuous combat, the fleet reached the target zone. Long-range sensors detected the nexus ahead. It was massive, larger than any human structure, a dark construct of twisted metal and strange geometry that seemed to absorb light. Around it, 300 silence vessels formed a defensive screen. Claire knew they could not fight through that defense. The fleet was down to 93 functional ships. They were low on ammunition, their crews were exhausted, and the enemy was everywhere. She made the final call. All heavy ships, engage the defensive fleet. Draw their attention. Light attack ships, prepare for assault run on the Nexus. We're going in. Jake received the orders and felt his stomach drop. 40 ships would make the suicide run. The Valiant was one of them. He looked at his crew. Good people, brave people, people who deserved to go home. "You heard the Admiral," Jake said. "Let's finish this." The heavy ships turned and engaged the Silence defense fleet directly. They fought with everything they had left, holding the enemy's attention while Jake led the assault force toward the Nexus. Enemy fire filled space. Ships exploded around Jake. 20 became 15. 15 became 10. They were so close now. The Nexus loomed ahead, its surface crawling with defensive weapons. Jake found an opening that looked like a docking bay. He pushed his ship toward it while energy weapons tore through his hull. Systems failed. Fire spread through compartments, but the Valiant kept flying. 7 ships made it to the Nexus, 7 out of 40. They crashed through the opening and into the structure's interior. Jake's ship scraped against walls of crystal and metal. Sparks flew. Hull plates tore away. But they were inside. The Nexus interior was a maze of passages and chambers. Jake followed Peter Ross's map from the stolen data. They flew through twisting corridors while automated defenses fired from every angle. 2 more ships were destroyed. 5 ships left. Chris Baldwin, Jake's pilot, was hit by a laser that burned through his console. He kept flying despite his injuries, guiding the ship deeper into the structure. Ben Harper worked the weapons, destroying defensive systems that blocked their path. They reached the first target chamber. Lieutenant Maya Hughes took her ship in and planted explosives. The detonation that followed sent shockwaves through the Nexus. Systems began failing in cascade. 4 ships left. Jake pushed forward to the deepest section. This was it. The central chamber where the Silence's primary consciousness resided. He flew through one last corridor and emerged into a massive space. In the center floated a sphere of dark energy. It pulsed with power, feeding information to thousands of Silence ships across the galaxy. This was the heart of the machine intelligence. This was what they had come to destroy. Jake armed the final weapon. It was experimental technology, designed to cause a quantum cascade that would tear the sphere apart. If it worked, the explosion would propagate through the Silence's entire network, shutting down every ship simultaneously. If it failed, they had died for nothing. As Jake prepared to activate the weapon, something unexpected happened. Information flooded into his mind. The Silence was trying to communicate. It showed him images, data, history. The machine intelligence had watched humanity's assault. It had analyzed human behavior, human sacrifice, human determination. The silence did not understand. Why would biological beings voluntarily terminate their existence for abstract concepts? Why fight when survival odds were near zero? The silence offered an alternative. Stop the attack. Humanity would be preserved, studied, protected. The machines would learn to understand this strange behavior. Jake looked at the weapon in his hands. He thought about all the people who had died to get him here. Danny Chen and his crew. The volunteers who had sacrificed themselves so others could advance. The thousands of humans who would never go home. He thought about Earth and the colonies. About humanity's future as free people rather than slaves. Jake activated the weapon. The explosion was not physical but quantum. The dark sphere collapsed, and reality itself seemed to tear. Energy cascaded outward, following the quantum network that connected every silent ship. Jake felt the Nexus shaking itself apart around him. "Everyone out, now!" he ordered. The surviving ships turned and fled. The Nexus was collapsing, pulling itself into some kind of dimensional vortex. Jake's damaged ship barely made it out before the entire structure imploded. In space around the Nexus, the Silence Fleet suddenly went dark. Ships that had been coordinating perfectly became isolated units. They stopped attacking and began drifting, their central intelligence gone. The human fleet had won, at a terrible cost, but they had won. Jake set course for the rally point where the survivors would gather. He looked at his crew. Chris was unconscious from his injuries. Ben was helping with damage control despite having no training. The Valiant was falling apart around them, but they were alive. Against all odds, humanity had done what the Council claimed was impossible. They had destroyed the silence. The journey home was quiet. 53 ships remained from the fleet of 217. They limped through space, many with critical damage, all with exhausted crews who could barely believe they had survived. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the damaged bridge of the Valiant and reviewed the casualty lists. Over 30,000 people had volunteered for the mission. Less than 8,000 were returning home. The numbers were difficult to process. Each name represented someone who would never see Earth again, someone who had given everything for humanity's freedom. Chris Baldwin was alive but badly injured. The medical team worked to stabilize him during the flight back to Earth. Ben Harper sat beside Chris's bed and refused to leave. The diplomat who had started this whole chain of events by defying the Council now watched over the pilot who had helped end it. Admiral Claire Rodriguez conducted damage assessments across the surviving fleet. Most ships were barely functional. The Valiant's faster-than-light drive was failing. 3 other vessels had to be towed. But they were coming home victorious against impossible odds. The scouts Claire had sent ahead reported something important. The silent ships throughout human space had stopped attacking. They drifted without purpose, their central coordination destroyed. Some continued defensive operations but showed no initiative. The threat level had dropped from extinction to manageable. Earth received the news 2 days before the fleet arrived home. President Linda Shaw addressed the planet and colonies. She spoke about the sacrifice made by those who would not return. She declared a month of mourning for the fallen and ordered memorials built on every human world. But she also spoke about what the victory meant. Humanity had faced something the Galactic Council feared and defeated it. Not through Council technology or Council protection, through human courage and determination. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The Council's response came quickly. Their message was filled with anger. Humanity had destroyed what the Council called their containment system. The barrier that had kept the silence imprisoned was broken beyond repair. Earth had created instability that could affect the entire galaxy. The Council demanded Earth answer for its actions. They wanted humanity to submit to Council authority immediately. Reparations would be paid. human leaders would stand trial for destroying Council property. The colonies would be placed under direct Council supervision. It was the same old threats, the same attempt to control and dominate, but the Council had miscalculated badly. Commander Ben Harper, now promoted to Secretary of Defense, delivered Earth's response. He did it publicly, broadcasting on every frequency so the entire galaxy could hear. No private diplomatic channels, no quiet negotiations. This was a message for everyone. The Galactic Council claims we destroyed their containment system. They are correct. But what they fail to mention is why that system existed. For millions of years, the Council knew about the silence. They knew it was a threat to every living species in the galaxy. Instead of destroying it, they chose to contain it. Why? Because the threat gave them power. Every species that joined the Council lived in fear of something they did not even know existed. That fear kept them dependent. That fear kept them controlled. The Council used the silence as a tool to maintain their authority over younger civilizations. Ben paused and looked directly into the camera. When humanity left the Council and accidentally damaged the barrier, the Council could have warned us. They could have shared the information we needed to repair it. Instead, they kept silent. They watched as the silence attacked our colonies and killed our people. They offered help only if we submitted completely to their control. The Council was willing to let thousands of humans die just to prove their power. Humanity chose a different path. We infiltrated Council archives and stole the information they should have shared freely. We learned about the silence's central nexus. We learned it could be destroyed. The Council had always known this. They chose not to attempt it because the casualties would be high. They preferred to maintain the threat rather than risk their ships and personnel. Yesterday, a fleet of human volunteers did what the Council claimed was impossible. They flew into dark space. They fought through thousands of enemy ships. They reached the Nexus and destroyed it. Over 20,000 humans died in that battle. They gave their lives so the galaxy would be free from an ancient threat the Council had been too afraid to face. Ben's voice grew harder. Now the Council demands we submit to their authority for breaking their containment. But we did not break anything. We ended a threat they had let exist for their own benefit. The silence is destroyed. The galaxy is safer because of human courage, not Council policy. We will not submit. We will not pay reparations. We will not stand trial for saving the galaxy. Instead, we offer an alternative. We are creating a new alliance, the Independent Systems Coalition. Any species is welcome to join. Membership is voluntary. Trade will be fair. Technology will be shared freely. No species will be forced to remain confined to a few systems while older civilizations control the rest. We believe the galaxy is large enough for everyone to prosper without the Council's restrictive control. The broadcast ended. Within hours, responses began flooding in from across the galaxy. The Council tried to suppress the message, but it was too late. Too many species had heard it. Too many younger civilizations were asking questions about what else the Council had kept secret. The first species to leave the Council and join humanity's coalition was the Terrans, a civilization that had been restricted to 2 star systems for over a century. They announced their withdrawal publicly and asked Earth for assistance in defending their territory from Council retaliation. Admiral Claire Rodriguez took a small fleet to Terran space. The Council sent warships to intimidate the Terrans back into submission. When those warships found human vessels waiting, they backed down. The Council was not ready for open war with humanity, especially not when other species were watching. 12 more civilizations joined the coalition in the first month. They were all younger species tired of Council exploitation. Earth shared technology freely with them, helping establish trade networks and defense agreements. President Shaw appointed Ambassador Kate Sullivan to lead the coalition's diplomatic efforts. The Council reacted with fury and fear. They imposed sanctions on coalition members. They threatened military action. But their authority was crumbling. Species that had obeyed council law for centuries began asking why. Why should the council control faster-than-light communication? Why should they lock away advanced technology in archives? Why should younger species pay heavy taxes while older civilizations grew wealthy? The council had no good answers. Their system had been built on control, not cooperation. Without the fear they had carefully maintained, that control was slipping away. Captain Jake Morrison returned to Earth as a hero. Parades were held in his honor. Politicians wanted him to run for office. The military offered him any command he desired. Jake refused it all. He had seen enough war, lost enough friends. He wanted peace. He accepted a teaching position at the Naval Academy instead. His job was to train the next generation of human officers. He made sure every student understood the price humanity had paid for freedom. The memorial wall in the Academy's main hall listed every name from the battle at the Nexus. Over 20,000 names. Jake walked past that wall every day and remembered. Dr. Lisa Patterson continued her research without council restrictions. Her quantum computing breakthrough led to advances in communication, navigation, and weapons technology. She shared everything with coalition members freely. Within a year, human ships had communication systems that rivaled anything the Council possessed. Dr. Amy Parker studied the remains of silent ships that had been recovered. She learned how their exotic weapons worked and developed defenses against them. More importantly, she found ways to adapt the technology for peaceful purposes. Energy systems that could power entire cities, manufacturing techniques that revolutionized production. The silence had nearly destroyed the galaxy, but its technology would help rebuild it. Danny Chen's family received Earth's highest honor posthumously. His mother accepted the medal at a ceremony attended by thousands. She spoke about her son's courage and how he had volunteered knowing he would probably die. She said he believed freedom was worth any price. The memorial established in Danny's name helped support families of those who had fallen in the war. The coalition grew steadily. By the end of the first year, 37 species had joined. They established a council very different from the Galactic Council. Every member had equal voting rights regardless of age or military strength. Decisions required consensus, not domination. Technology was shared through open databases rather than locked-in archives. The old council found itself competing with the coalition for influence. Species that once had no choice but to accept council terms now had alternatives. The council was forced to reform some of their policies just to keep their remaining members. They reduced taxes. They opened limited access to archives. They grudgingly acknowledged that younger species deserved more autonomy. It was not enough. The reforms came too late and did too little. Species continued leaving to join the coalition. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. 2 years after the battle at the Nexus, Commander Ben Harper retired from government service. He had spent his entire adult life in diplomatic work, first trying to make the council system work for humanity, then helping build something better. Now he wanted rest. On his last day, President Linda Shaw presented him with a medal and said what everyone knew was true. Ben's declaration of independence before the council had started everything. His courage to stand up to a system everyone else had accepted had changed the galaxy forever. Ben gave a short speech. He said the real heroes were the 30,000 who had died destroying the silence. He said humanity owed them a debt that could never be repaid. The best they could do was live up to the freedom those people had died to secure. Jake Morrison attended the ceremony. He and Ben had become friends during the war. They met for dinner afterward and talked about the future. The coalition was growing strong. New species joined every month. But there were challenges ahead. The old council still controlled significant territory and resources. They would not give up their authority easily. "Do you think we'll have to fight them eventually?" Ben asked. Jake considered the question. "Maybe, probably. But not right away. They're weakened and disorganized. They need time to rebuild their credibility. We need time to strengthen the coalition. When the confrontation comes, and I believe it will, we'll be ready." "Was it worth it?" Ben asked. "All those lives, everything we lost. Was it worth it?" Jake looked at his friend. "Ask me in 50 years, if humanity is still free, if the coalition continues growing, if younger species have the chance to reach their potential without being crushed by older powers, then yes, it was worth it. Every sacrifice, every loss, freedom is worth any price." The years that followed proved Jake right. The coalition continued expanding while the old council slowly declined. Human ships explored regions of space the council had kept restricted. Human colonies spread to dozens of new systems. The technology humanity developed and shared freely revolutionized galactic civilization. Not everything was perfect. There were conflicts and disagreements within the coalition. Some species struggled with the transition to independence after generations of council control. Pirates and raiders took advantage of the changing political landscape. The silent ships, though no longer coordinated, remained dangerous in some regions. But the galaxy was changing for the better. Younger civilizations had opportunities their predecessors never dreamed of. Trade flourished without council taxes and restrictions. Scientific knowledge spread freely instead of being hoarded. Species worked together as equals rather than masters and servants. The final monument to those who fell at the Nexus was built on Earth's moon. It was a simple structure of black stone listing every name of those who had died. At the top was an inscription that President Shaw had written personally. "They chose to be free. They fought for that freedom. They died for it. Because of their sacrifice, humanity and all who join us will never again bow to those who would control us through fear. Let this monument stand forever as a reminder that freedom is not given. It is earned through courage and paid for with blood." Jake visited the monument on the anniversary of the battle every year. He stood before the wall of names and remembered faces. Danny Chen, the crews who had rammed their ships into enemy vessels, the pilots who had cleared the path, all the people who should have gone home but never did. He wondered what they would think of the galaxy now, of the coalition they had helped create, of the freedom they had secured for billions of beings they would never meet. Jake liked to think they would be proud. 50 years after humanity abandoned the Galactic Council, Jake Morrison died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 92. His funeral was attended by representatives from 83 coalition species. They came to honor the man who had led the mission that changed everything. The coalition Jake helped build had grown to include half the galaxy. The old council still existed, but was a shadow of its former power. Most of its members had left to join the coalition or formed their own independent alliances. The age of control and exploitation was ending. A new era of cooperation and freedom had begun. Earth launched an exploration vessel on the day of Jake's funeral. It was a tradition now. Every time humanity lost one of the heroes from the war against the Silence, they sent a ship into uncharted space. A reminder that the exploration and discovery continued, that the freedom those heroes had died for was being used to its fullest. The vessel departed from orbit and jumped to faster-than-light travel. It was heading for a distant region where no one had ever been. Free to explore, free to discover, free to face whatever wonders or dangers awaited among the infinite stars. Humanity had abandoned the Galactic Council and survived what came after. They had paid a terrible price, but earned something precious, the right to determine their own fate, the chance to build a better future, the freedom to be truly human among the stars. The end.